Welcome back to Not Alone with Melissa Sue Methvin. Today, I'm so excited because this past year, I've been experimenting with myself with peptides. And what I found, what it's been doing for my body, it's opened my eyes to remove the fears from them. And I'm all about let's get more educated. When I'm passionate about something where I'm noticing that I'm getting healthier, I just got my labs back. I do them every 6 months, and how I am optimized. I am all in the green. I am seeing shifts, even like my nitric oxide to be elevated now, and on a cellular basis as well, which many diseases, there's a mutation of your cells, it's metabolic, and how we can remove the fear. For example, some people think, oh, if I take a peptide, it's the easy route. No, we live in a very toxic environment. This is the reality. How we can biohack, help ourselves to optimize, this is peptides. And so today I have Anthony Castore. He is an SSRP health coach. And also he's been in the health industry for a very, very long time. And him himself, as he was training himself, coaching other people through life coaching, nutrition, and fitness, he got curious about peptides, how he can optimize his clients. And he got himself certified. And now he will discuss and explain what is a peptide, how we can utilize them for different diseases, for cancer, for optimization on a cellular level, and remove all the fears and the noise that we hear about them. So welcome. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me as a guest. I'm really excited about our conversation.
I know, I'm excited. We already started in the trailer before we got, I was like, wait, pause.
We had a whole episode in there. Yeah.
We did. We had a whole episode, and it just gets me so excited.
Yeah.
And I want to dive into just maybe a bit, people get to know you
Sure.
and what got you involved with peptides. And then we'll kind of get into how you use them.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Indiana, and I was a small kid. I was $117 dripping wet. And when I was a senior, we moved to Ohio, and I was like, I got to get back to back to Indiana with all my friends. So went there for my freshman year of college. My freshman year of college, my girlfriend weighed a pound more than me. So it was like, I better start working out. And started working out. I had an amazing strength coach. And like most guys, I thought maybe I can do something in bodybuilding or powerlifting. I've got the most wonderful parents in the world, but they weren't the most wonderful parents for wanting to be a bodybuilder. So I quickly discovered that maybe this isn't my calling. As they say, those who can do, those who can't coach. And I really enjoy the coaching. I just wanted to learn as much as I could. I'm a guy that asks a lot of questions. If we were in elementary school together, I'd be that kid raising his hand in the front row all the time, and you'd be like, this kid's got another question.
I love that, because that's what I encourage people to do. Ask a lot of questions.
You got to be curious.
Yeah.
But as I was doing this with the whole bodybuilding scene and everything, one of the hiccups for bodybuilding outside of not having enough muscle was the whole protan that you have to put on. This stuff stinks and it gets all over your clothes. And I was reading about this peptide they were using in France. It was called melanotin, and it improved your sleep and it made you tan. And I'm like, box checked. So I looked into it. And then I was hearing about these bodybuilders using this IGF-1 and growing these freakishly large muscles. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. I've got to know how this stuff works. So like a lot of people, it was just kind of experimentation and learning a little bit about it here and there. But I realized, this is something that I really need to understand. It's fun to be a chemistry experiment, but you got to be responsible too. And I saw the opportunity to go take these certifications, and there were no other strength coaches really doing it. I'd been strength training for 30 years, working as a coach, and worked with the highest level of athletes, but nobody was talking about peptides. So I was like, what the heck, leap of faith. I'm going to check this stuff out. So I took all the A4M certifications, all the SSRP certifications, literally every course out there. And I just kept consuming. And I remember when I got offered the fellowship position, it was really kind of a funny story. They had just started these. They were called Grand Rounds. And it's you, Dr. Seeds, Dr. Page, and there's generally like 9 other people in the room. And I'd done literally every event they had. And I wanted to go to this one, but I'm like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not qualified. So I was like, I'll sit this one out. I get an email. The email says, hey, we'd love to have you at Grand Rounds. And I'm thinking, all right, it's AI, they're sending it to everybody. And they saw I went to a lot of events. So I just kind of ignored it. I got another email and I'm like, all right, I'm on the mailing list. I get it. And I wrote them back on the chance maybe it wasn't a auto reply thing. It's like, I genuinely appreciate this. I love the stuff I've learned from you guys. You guys are doing a beautiful job of explaining the why behind this stuff. So it's not just a protocol, but I want that space to go to somebody that can really use it, somebody that deserves it. And I just don't think I'm qualified. So I get another email, and this one was from Dr. Seeds, but I thought, wow, they stepped their AI game up. Dr. Seeds wrote me, and it was personally asking me to go there. So I talked to my fiance. I was like, Jules, her name's Julie. I was like, Jules, apparently Dr. Seeds wants me to go to this Grand Rounds thing, and I think it's a mistake, but if they're going to let me go, you know how much I love learning. And she was 100% supportive, which I'm so grateful for. So I went over there and it was amazing. I mean, humbling, but amazing. I went in there and they say, if you're the dumbest one in the room, you're the smartest one in the room. So I don't know quite how that works, but maybe I was the smartest one in the room that day. And I presented the case I had. To give you just a little bit of back history, with the athletes I work with, I'd been putting together protocols and nutrition supplements, peptides, all this stuff from what I learned. But when they say case study, I was like, I don't know if this is even how to present a case study. The case study went great. The conversation in there was great. And there was just so much support. People loved the fact that I was from a strength coaching background. And it's one of the things that made the SSRP so unique, that instead of being like, he's knuckle dragging strength coach, they were like, he's got a different lens he's looking at things through. And it's something that I really value, that the more people from different backgrounds that look at the same problem, the better solutions you come up with.
Yeah, I believe that. Did you find some of your athletes that were resistant to using these peptides because they're almost looking at it like they were going to cheat?
There was a
on
lot
themselves,
of,
on their body, they weren't seeing it as like just optimizing, but they were thinking, well, this might be the easy route.
There was some of that. It was kind of an interesting, almost both ends of the spectrum. So you have the ones that are like, I don't want to cheat. This isn't natural. And then you have the other ones that are like, can they test for it?
Yes.
I work with both.
They're like all in, you know? But yeah, maybe to dive into that, where the confusion of, is it cheating?
Mm-hmm.
What is a peptide? Like, just if you're going to make it speaking to a child, you
Sure,
know,
yeah.
and just make it so easy to understand that we are not cheating when we're adding these. We definitely have to have the right person, that knows how to work with them, right? But what is a peptide?
Easiest way to describe what a peptide is imagine you and I are amino acids, right? It doesn't matter which one, we're amino acids. And we decide to hold hands for no other reason than we want to make a bond. So that bond to amino acids, peptide bond, we've got a peptide. And the shorter ones, up to 4 amino acids, those are going to be bioregulators. Now, if we had a bunch of our friends with us, we'll say up to 40 of them. We each bring 19 friends. We got this big chain of hands. I mean, how cool is that? Hands across America, right?
Yes.
That would be a peptide. Anything up to 40 people holding hands, or in this case, amino acids joined by a peptide bond, is considered a peptide. Now, to give people a little bit of history and some other, peptides they're probably more familiar with, insulin was the first peptide, and it's been around for years. And it's a longer chain of amino acids than what they now consider a peptide. So it's still a peptide, but because it's a longer chain of amino acids, it's different regulatory category and with a longer chain also. Kind of how I think about it is it's like your insulin, for example. If you don't make insulin, you're adding it into your system. And if you do make insulin, you're adding it in so you can achieve a super physiologic range. Growth hormone would be another example, 191 amino acids. With the peptides that are under 40, what I want people to think about when we're asking ourselves what's a peptide is it's a supervisor and it sends a message and it tells our cells what it needs to do. So that might be something as simple as, hey, we could use a little bit more vascularity to where this injury is. Would you mind directing some of it over there, like a BPC 157 and
Okay, so just to kind of bring it back, so I'm understanding, you're saying the peptide is just kind of speaking to the cells.
Mm-hmm. It's a signal.
It's a signal. So it's telling them, okay, let's produce a little bit more. So it's not so much the peptide itself is mimicking, what it needs to produce, and then we stop producing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a signal
Yes.
for our own body to produce more.
That's a perfect way to describe it. It's a signal. And the other thing that's unique about peptides that I really want people to understand is peptides modulate. And what I mean by that is, imagine your stereo. You can crank it up to 10 if you got your favorite song on and you want to make some noise, or you can turn it down to 0 if the kids are trying to study or something and we can't have noise in the house. But you can't crank it up to 12 because there's no 12. It's just going to oscillate between 10 and 0, whatever's appropriate for the situation. So when we talk about modulating, that's what a peptide does. It has that ability to go up to 10, back to 0 as quick or slow as we need it to.
Okay. Wow. So I love that explanation. It really gives me kind of the more understanding of what it does when I've been taking them for a year, and now I'd love to dive into just some of the peptides that are some of your favorite ones that you love, that you've used, and explain to them. Like some people have never used them. Mm-hmm. So if we could start even with, a list of some of your favorite ones and explain what they do.
That's
probably really hard. There's a lot of them. I mean, for example, I've now tried the Tirzepatide. I've tried, and I've noticed, and I know there's a lot of noise. It's just but for me, what I notice most help with my nervous system to calm down the food noise, like the sugar cravings, that I was getting late at night, because of cortisol spikes and all of that. And so it quiet all of that. It almost made me, I've always been a healthy eater. But now it really built that foundation where I don't crave that sugar as much, and there's not so much noise for those sugar, like it balances, the insulin. Is that right? And so and it reduced a lot of inflammation right away, which for many diseases, we want to reduce inflammation, right? And so I've then tried SS31 as well. And so I'd love for you to just dive into those to start off. I've done Epitalon as well, which I noticed my sleep. Oh my gosh. Sleep and I'm such a light sleeper ever since I've had young children and always on alert. And there's a lot to do with my story as well. I'm still working on building stress resilience and my nervous system. That's why I use breath work, because I was always on, right? And so how I've noticed these peptides help me along the way and to find more cellular energy, because I was really depleted for a while. I was losing my hair, I have autoimmune, and now I don't have any of that, right? But I've learn how to optimize my cellular energy. And I've been seeing it in my labs, in a lot of the work that I do. So I'd love to, dive into some of these that I mentioned.
Well, those are two of my favorites. So this will be a fun topic. We'll start with the Tirzepatide, which I think is really fascinating. People are familiar with what it does for the food noise. And the way that it does that is it tones down that dopamine reward signaling we get in the brain when we eat something sweet. So when it tones it down, we don't crave it as much. But the inflammation, that's the real kind of like behind the scenes, super cool thing. So I like to talk about this through the lens of exercise, coming from the strength coaching background. Think about when you work out, what happens. You're creating a stress, right? And when you create that stress, there's going to be a little bit of breakdown of tissue, and there's going to be inflammation. And those are positive things as long as we get that signaling from IL-6, not that it matters, to create that inflammation. And then we have our antioxidant system turn on, put out that fire so we can repair. Easier way to think about it is my fiance would love it if we redid the kitchen. And if we were to rip out all the cabinets, but while we were ripping out the cabinets, try to put new ones in, and we never cleaned up, like, that's going to be a big mess. She'll be happy we're getting a new kitchen, but it's going to take forever and it's not going to look real good. So with these peptides, what we're able to do with the inflammation is help that process run a little bit smoother. We're able to say this is a time where we want to have cellular cleanup. This is a time where we can focus on a little bit more building. And the GLPs actually do both. So Tirzepatide in particular supports, it's called phase shift. What phase shift is going back to that exercise analogy. When we work out and we get that inflammation, that positive inflammation, it's just think about the letter M and the number 1, M1, and that's macrophage phase 1, but nobody needs to know that, M1. And when we get that anti-inflammatory response so that we can adapt to the exercise, M2. And as simple as that, when a GLP supports that process, it keeps us from staying in that chronic inflammation state. And this will kind of be a nice transition into SS31, because when we think about, well, what happens when somebody's taking a GLP and they say, I'm just not making progress anymore.
Yes.
I'm working out, I'm barely eating anything. And even to pin it to your experience with still working through stress response and resilience, they've got kind of this always on thing. So if we think about, our cell can't see what's going on outside. It doesn't know if we got a mortgage payment coming up or we just went to the gym. It just senses the chemical signals from stress. And when it senses those, it says, this is our cell that supports our whole body. So most logical thing it's going to need to do to keep us upright is make energy. And it doesn't have time to make that energy that's going to give us a lot of ATP. It just needs energy really quick. So it starts burning through glucose. And when you think about burning through glucose, that's going to create a lot of oxidative stress.
Yes.
And the inside of our mitochondria, which is made from cardiolipin, it's a 4-tail phospholipid. What's going to end up happening is it's going to oxidize. And when it oxidizes, it's going to crack, like a wall getting cracks in it. And when it starts to crack, the mitochondria's DNA leaks out into the cytosol. And the reason that's so fascinating, these mitochondria that power our whole body, 6th grade biology, the powerhouse of the cell, right? The mitochondria that power our whole body, they used to be bacteria, single cell organisms, independent. And at some point our cell was like, that looks like a good meal, I'm going to eat this. And then it figured out, hey, we can work together. This guy makes energy and I was pretty hungry, so we got a good thing going. But when that DNA from the mitochondria leaks into the cytosol, the cell panics. It thinks it's being overthrown by a bunch of bacteria. It's like, whoa, I ate this one guy. Now all his buddies are mad at me. This isn't good. And what it does is it trips pathway. Nobody needs to know this, but I'll throw it out there for the nerds like me. C gas sting. An easy way to remember that, if you get stung by a bee, that's not a good thing. C gas sting. And what that does is that triggers inflammation and it throws off a whole immune response. So now all of a sudden our immune system's on overdrive. It's overreacting to everything. You see this autoimmune reactions. And our macrophages, remember the M1, it's stuck in that M1. It won't switch to M2. And our mitochondria, they've got those oxidized inner membranes that are leaking DNA. So this is a real pickle we've got ourselves into. Body doesn't want to lose fat. If we take calories away, it perceives that as a threat because now there's not enough energy available. If we give it more calories right now, it can't even do anything with them because the mitochondria is all beat up and it's so stressed, it's just reacting. So SS31, other peptide you talked about,
Yes.
This is where this can be so effective. SS31 binds to the cardiolipin inside the mitochondria. So imagine if you got an old building you're fixing up. It's a beautiful building. You don't want to just scrap it. but it needs some work, and it's raining outside, and you got the materials on their way, phospholipids and whatever in the case of the cell, but they aren't there yet. So we just need some duct tape for the mitochondria. So the SS31 is like duct tape for the inner mitochondrial membrane. It's going to patch that up so that electrons can flow through. And what that means is we can make energy that.
But not use the glucose as the source. Does it help with that?
It's a first step in helping with that.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely does help with that in the sense that now when that glucose is going through there, that inner membrane's more resilient from it, so it's not going to be as damaging. So we can start to recalibrate our antioxidant response system and start to have that whole build and then clean up, repair. And then
I want to kind of touch base because now we're kind of talking about mitochondria and the cell.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk for cancer now that it's a metabolic disease, and how, we feed cancer with glucose, right? The sugar. So take away, a lot of times they say, get in on a ketogenic diet, and just so we're not feeding the cell the glucose, right? Taking it away. And so that's kind of what you're explaining, is that it just finds a source of energy. It's looking for something else, and it gets glucose, but that's not what we want, right? We want the cell to feed on something else, right?
A good way to think about it is our cell has the ability to use either fat or glucose for an energy source. So in a perfect world, if you think about like when we're sitting here having a conversation, neither of us have to jump up really quick, so we can take our time to make some energy. And when we can take our time to make energy, we use, here I go again with 6th grade biology, oxidative phosphorylation. And the reason that's so cool is because 1, we're starting to use fat for energy, and 2, it's going to make more ATP. And remember, ATP is your checking account that writes checks to your immune system, your brain, your muscles, your heart, all that stuff. So we want to have as much of that as possible. Now, conversely, me and you go to the gym and we're doing a workout where we're pumping some heavy iron, or we're doing some interval training. We need that energy really quick. We don't have time to be like, just make some ATP, no big deal. We need that energy quick, so we need that glucose. So where cancer kind of breaks the metabolism, at least one of the points where it breaks the metabolism, is it makes it want to just ferment, makes it want to just use that glucose for energy. And it's also, cancer is so smart, it's got a lot figured out. It has a way of dampening down our antioxidant response system. So thinking back to, remember when we work out, we create oxidative stress and inflammation, and the whole positive change we see from the workout is the ability to put that fire out, to smolder it, and then to have that repair start to take place. So cancer turns that antioxidant system down just enough that it doesn't get that signal to come in and repair. And that's where that oxidative stress comes from. So definitely what you're saying is, in my opinion, accurate, that cancer is a metabolic disease. Mm-hmm. So the challenge becomes, how do we re-educate the cell on its ability to use multiple fuel sources? How do we restart the antioxidant system? And that kind of circles back to the ketone thing. Yeah. It's really interesting the way it works. When you think about outside the cell, we have an NAD to an NADH ratio. And then we have, if you think about the electron transport chain as bus stops, we got 4 bus stops. And the first one is where that electron or bus is coming in. The second one, we have our Krebs cycle. You guys, man, I'm right on the sixth grade biology train.
I love all this.
Krebs cycle is when it's working, it's going to dump electrons in at complex 2. And so inside we have FADH, and when it gets those electrons, that's one of the things that are going to signal, it's called NRF2, which is our antioxidant system. So with a ketone, what we're able to do is bypass that complex 1. We're able to put an electron right into that FADH and get that antioxidant system started. So even though cancer kind of outsmarted us, we're like, well done. We've got one for you, dumping a little ketones in there.
Ketones. Okay. And ketones just from diet change, or is there some peptides that you can use for that too?
So for the ketones, actually, in my opinion, the best option, because remember, we want to have flexibility in the cells. So we don't want it just not to use glucose at all. We just want it to be more intelligent about when it's using glucose, and we want the antioxidant system to work. So with a healthy, balanced diet where we're getting some carbohydrates, and most importantly, we're getting our fruits and vegetables, and super important from there, we're getting those fibers that are going to help with our microbiome. And we're getting from resistant starch things that are going to make butyrate. And I'll circle back to the butyrate. This is really
actually,
cool.
I'd love to. Yeah, I heard about butyrate as well. For
super
cancer.
cool
Yes,
stuff.
yes.
Yeah. But with the ketones, if we use what's called a ketone monoester, specifically the Veach monoester, some people call it the Oxford monoester. It's the same thing, but Professor Veach was the one that discovered it. What's unique about it is when we make a ketone, if we're on a ketogenic diet, we make, it's called beta-hydroxybutyrate. And what a ketone monoester is it's got this beta-hydroxybutyrate, and then it's got imagine like a little timing fuse that's attached to, it's called 1,3-butanediol. And the 1,3-butanediol gets metabolized in the liver. It makes ketones. So we've got the BHB, just like ours. Cell can use that right away, and we know that's going to translate into more ATP at the end, just like we were burning fat. So we're reestablishing what we want. We've got that timing fuse. So after we get that bump in ketones, we still have a little bit of backup fuel if things start to lag. And the reason that's so important, and this is, ketones are almost a whole nother topic, but I'll try to make it brief. When we think about if somebody's on a ketogenic diet and we've just got that BHB coming in, ketone gets transported into the cell from MCT transporters. Those also transport lactate and pyruvate, and those are both important. Lactate helps for modulating redox, which is going to be our antioxidant system. And both of those are important fuel sources, so we don't want to use up all the transporters with just this big dump of BHB. So with the monoester, we're taking some of the BHB in, so we get all the benefits. We've got the timing fuse, but we can still get some lactate and pyruvate, whatever we need in there. And then we can have some more ketones. So we kind of have this constant stream of energy coming in. And when the cell starts to sense like, hey, I've got a constant stream of energy, so I'm no longer on amber alert for energy failure. And we've got the electrons being donated to bottom of the Krebs cycle. So we're starting to jumpstart that antioxidant system again. These are a couple of the things that with a lot of other things can start to make steps towards getting somebody back on track.
On track. And then so SS31, you said will kind of help seal the cell and become kind of stronger cell. Now, what's another one that you love using for?
Another one I love. It'd be easier to tell you the ones I don't love, but here's some interesting.
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding.
One? Yeah.
So some other ones that I really like, I think are maybe underused, is a lot of people talk about nerve pain and inflammation that comes with that.
Yes.
And there's a peptide, and it's actually proved medication, Tirzepatide. It's ARA-290. And ARA-290 is unique in that it works on that big inflammatory NF-κB that we hear about, but it also works on, it's called the innate repair receptor. And that allows us to actually repair nerves. So people with like diabetic neuropathy, this is something that can be helpful for them. And when we think about, well, where does ARA-290 come from? And this kind of circles back to that point we were talking about originally, where people are like, these are, I don't want to take anything unnatural. So the ARA-290 comes from erythropoietin, which we make. And erythropoietin would be great to take if it didn't make our blood so viscous that we don't want to have thick, sticky blood. that's going to affect our vasculature and all sorts of problems. So they found a way to take that property of being able to work on the innate repair receptor, repair nerves, and reduce inflammation without erythropoiesis. And voila, we got ARA 290.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because my husband always complained of nerve damage. But now I know from like being a dentist and having mercury poisoning, which affects the nerve, and neurotoxin. And there's so many other diseases that they attack the nerve. So this could help recovery, right? And what about epitalon? I know that helps elongate the telomeres, right? And they recommended to maybe use it once or twice a year to help with the stress damage.
Yeah.
Can you explain how epitalon works?
Yeah, absolutely. So the epitalon's a fascinating peptide, and the research comes from Professor Kabat-Zinn over in Russia. To give people the backstory, I love the history around these things. It's really cool. The history is during the Cold War, Russia had these submarines, these nuclear submarines. And you can imagine being underwater in a submarine, nuclear stuff around. After 6 months, people are coming up like 60 years had gone by. And there's a lot that goes into training these people. So they're not expendable. And he was tasked with the challenge of what can we do to preserve youth in these people and restore some of that, protect them even. And one of the things he observed was that their telomeres were shortening. And to give people a little context on what a telomere is, if you look down at your shoelaces, mine are tucked in, but I swear I have them.
I'm not wearing any.
All right, bad analogy. If you think about a shoelace, you know how you got that little plastic thing on the end? So imagine the part of the shoelace, that plastic thing goes around, is your DNA. And that shoelace essentially is the protective coating that keeps it from getting frayed. And our DNA, if it's damaged and frayed, we're going to make copies of that. So when the telomeres are lengthened and we have that protection for the DNA, it allows things like a GHK to get in and edit parts of the DNA that might have got damaged. So the epitalon, great for resyncing circadian rhythm. And honestly, I'm not 100% clear on the mechanism behind that. I know it does that, but I don't want to give information I'm not clear on.
Yeah, I wonder if because it helps, elongate the telomeres, right? Repair stress damage, then your nervous system almost like, is able to relax a little bit, right? I wonder how that affects the nervous system, because I can't help to see the world in a nervous system lens and how it impacts me and how it can help prepare the body for maybe some deep work. But I've also noticed with peptides, though, when others decide to try them, for example, they may have adverse reactions right away. For example, some of them have tried Tirzepatide, and right away they can't sleep.
Yeah.
They can't sleep. They have almost anxiety. And for me, it's almost a signal of their nervous system where it's at.
You're exactly right.
And accepting that medicine, accepting that peptide, because it's on high alert. It's almost like, I'm not ready for repair.
A really good way to think about it, and you're spot on, just to build on top of what you said, when we think about what's Tirzepatide doing, it's creating an environment where we're not going to want to eat as much. So if we don't eat as much, we don't have as much fuel. And if we don't have enough fuel, then we have an energy sensor, the AMPK. So that's going to say like, hey, we need to make substrate available. We need more energy. And when it does that, if there's no food coming in, that's going to start to potentially break down like muscle tissue. And that's one of the reasons sometimes people lose muscle. And that protein is going to go through the liver, gluconeogenesis. If you think about that word gluco, like glucose, new, genesis, creation, it's creating a new sugar. And that's supporting that energy. So where I'm going with that is the process of breaking things down and making energy available is a catabolic process. And it's going to be something that's going to temporarily spike sympathetic drive. So going back to the person who's super stressed and is like, my friend lost 30 pounds on a GLP, I'm going to put that in even though I'm super stressed. You're putting even more sympathetic drive in them. So that's why it becomes just exponentially more important to do the breath work.
Yeah. Beforehand. I always say that actually my gut God, um, my gut God connection book is that I could tell you all these protocols that I've tried and love.
Mm-hmm.
But before I've noticed if you are in the sympathetic, you're going to have adverse reaction. For example, like when you're detoxing,
Yeah.
detoxing from heavy metals or parasites and trying to find that biome, harmony. And I'm seeing people react. So I said, let's work on your nervous system first, because what happens, and I see this in the mouth too, if the patient is in the sympathetic, you're reducing the oxygen to the tissue, the blood flow. And so how is that going to repair, right? We need to be in that rest and repair and digest. And so it's important to do that first. But I also notice some of them can maybe help you with that nervous system. And, are there tools that alongside, like if somebody's having a reaction, but really needs to stabilize their glucose, and this would be really beneficial for them, what can they do so their body can accept this peptide?
So for stabilizing the glucose, a couple things they can do peptide-wise. MOTS-c can be effective. It's going to...
Yeah, I've heard MOTS-c is actually really, really good.
It's a great peptide in the right environment. It's going to help the cell make the decision about which fuel it's using, so it can improve that metabolic flexibility in the cell. And it disrupts the folate cycle, which is going to affect methylation, which your body's going to interpret as a stress. And remember, stress, AMPK. And that AMPK signaling makes substrate available. And then signaling also, like, now we got more substrate, but think about it. Where are we going to burn this? We got to have more mitochondria. So it makes more mitochondria through, here I go with the alphabet soup again, PGC1 alpha. Nobody needs to know that, but it makes more mitochondria. So we have more places to make energy.
Okay.
And
now, would you combine both, like MOTS-c and Tirzepatide, or one or the other?
I think that you could definitely everything, and that's the challenge that for a lot of people, we hear about these tools and it's easy to think about it. I'll use myself for an example. I used to think of peptides like a vending machine, like this does this, so I'm going to put a quarter in and get this out. And we have to think about exactly what you said, the terrain that you're putting it in. You can't plant a rose bush in a swamp. And that terrain is going to be your central nervous system, your circadian rhythm. And the other one, and this ties into your question about the glucose sensitivity, the lowest hanging fruit is how we hydrate. Would it be crazy if I told you you could drink 8 glasses of water a day and be dehydrated?
No, I've heard that actually, because I kind of do that. And sometimes they're like, you're dehydrated. I'm like, oh, so now I've incorporated more drinking like electrolytes and some salt, like mineralized salt. And
So this is really cool. Creatine's a peptide. And when we think about the other thing creatine is, it's a neutral osmolyte. And don't worry about the neutral osmolyte. Just think of it as a particle. Water follows particles. So imagine this cell that we have that we're trying to get water in. Good example is if we take a shower, are we going to be hydrated after we take a shower? That's a silly question. Of course we're not. We're going to be clean, but we're not going to be hydrated. And that's because it's not getting in there. When we take electrolytes, there's ion-gated channels that are going to allow things like sodium, potassium, chloride to go in and out of the cell. And if we accumulate too many in there, it's going to fry the circuit board, because that little mitochondria we were talking about, it carries a charge. And too much of a charge, it's going to be just like if I tried to rig up my stereo back in 7th grade, my parents' amplifier, and it wasn't meant to do that. We'll just leave it at that. But getting back to the neutral osmolytes, like a creatine, some other examples would be like alanine, which is an amino acid, glycine, which is an amino acid, or glutamine. People are probably familiar with that one. These particles, they don't have any charge. So what they can do is just kind of float into the cell. And when they float into the cell, what the water does is it follows these particles, and that cell stretches. And when it stretches, that sends signals. It basically, when we think about our hormones and all that stuff, the receptors on the cell and their responsiveness is going to be dependent on that volume of the cell, the polarization of the cell. So with the neutral osmolytes added in with the electrolytes and sipping it throughout the day, we can maintain cell volume, which is truly what hydration is. And that, plus the nervous system, plus the circadian, is how we turn that swamp into a yard where we can plant that rose bush and everything's going to work beautifully.
Okay. I love the way you explain things. It makes a lot of sense. And there's so many things I want to ask. But the next one was peptide. And then I want to go into your own story of mercury poisoning, because that's a big topic that I talk about with biological dentistry. And it was interesting when we were in the trailer and you had mentioned you had mercury poisoning. But first, one more, the Humanin. Like, can you explain to me, like, what's the benefits of using that one?
Humanin's fascinating. It prevents apoptosis of the cell. And when we think about what that means for our mitochondria, think about it like this. And this is just a real kind of dumbed down version of what these mitochondrial peptides do. If we think about SS31 as the duct tape repair, we think about MOTS-c as the strength coach, the exercise mimetic, and we can think about Humanin as the hold it, you guys are perfect, let me make some copies of you. So it prevents that apoptosis where the cell's going to die and we're going to lose that blueprint of good mitochondria we have. Now, because of that, in certain types of cancers, we don't want that to happen. We need to have that cell death and turnover. So you have to be really careful with that. And we don't want to have it for too long because, again, there's supposed to be some cell turnover. But when we get those mitochondria to where we want them to be, freezing them for a week or two and making some copies of them, it's like we're transcribing the best possible mitochondria. And when we think about the other unique thing about Humanin is its ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. So a lot of things that we think about with regards to cognitive decline truly reduces down to an energy crisis in the neuron. And that's going to translate into mitochondria could be a little better. So that's where something like SBT 272, which is SS31's beautiful little cousin that can cross the blood-brain barrier more effectively, with Humanin really shows some promise for these people. So exciting step on the horizon for sure.
Like, I think, am I saying it correctly? Cristagen. There's another one. Is that what it's called? I forget. I kind of forget.
I know what you're talking about, and I am blocking out the name of it. I want to say Chrysin, but that's not it.
Yeah, but that's another one I think that helps with focus and then CLAX as well, right?
CMAX and Selenic,
yeah. Those ones I've tried just to calm the nerves before I speak, and so but I do feel it's important to work with someone that's very knowledgeable. Like you said, too much of one thing is not that great. So and then all at once, trying them all at once might not be a really good idea because you're like, oh, your body won't know what to do. And so working with someone is very knowledgeable and also your source where you're getting them. Yeah. But I'm curious as far as detox, your story of mercury poisoning and going through detox, did you use any peptides to help you with any your mercury detox?
Yeah. So my mercury poisoning, go big or go home. I managed to get it twice. And
you said first was like fish related, right?
First, yes. It was the funniest thing. I was typical bodybuilding background. I ate a lot of steak and chicken, and I just decided fish tastes pretty good. So I was grilling it. It was the summer. Next thing you know, I'm grilling it 4 times a day and then 5 times a day. And I was really responsible about where I got it from.
And did you also at that time when you're grilling, you're saying your early 20s, did you also have amalgam fillings, the silver fillings in your mouth? Were they already there?
Already had the fillings. And
how many? Do you remember how many you had? Because I know you said you've had them removed.
2. Yeah, I had two fillings. And the first time I got mercury poisoning, we ended up doing chelation for it. And I didn't get the fillings out at that point. We did the chelation. My levels were at 25.2 in the beginning. And within, it was probably 8 weeks, we got it down to like 2.4. So the chelation really helped. And it was just giving my body the support it needed for things like glutathione that my body wasn't making, and some other things to help bind to the metal and pull it out of the system. Now, the second time, and this is a more interesting one, I thought I was in the clear, and I certainly cut back my seafood intake. But what I didn't realize, and I'm sure you probably already know this, that when your levels are that high, it's not something you want in the blood, so the body's going to pull it into the bone. And then when your cell efficiency improves, that's when the body's going to sense like I can start letting it out of the bone because we have the efficiency to get rid of it. But sometimes it can throw too much in. And the other thing that had slid under my radar, and I didn't know about this one, was we were waiting on our house to be finished, and we were staying in a really nice new apartment complex, but there were railroad tracks by there. And those fumes from the railroads are really high in methyl mercury. And when we think about mercury and the reason like mercury fillings are so dangerous, mercury itself, I'm not telling anybody to do this, but if you put mercury in your mouth, like not good, but that's not really where the problem comes in. When we bite down and it gets converted into methyl mercury, that's when it can more easily travel
the
up.
Gas, right? It's a gas. Yeah, that's what I say. It's like when you have that metal in your mouth and you're biting and it gets hot, cold, hot, cold. It's
and
the
you're chewing
gases.
too.
Yeah, chewing.
You got a gas making factory. Mm-hmm. And so the second time my levels were up to like 19.1 and did the chelation again, and I got the fillings out this time. And the other thing I started to do was it was called Med Therapy Pro, which is a zeolite binder. And zeolite, well, first of all, it's the coolest sounding supplement ever. And it comes from volcanic ash. So I kind of feel like I'm telling a superhero story when I talk about this.
I bought some. I have some actually, yes, for our own detox.
Yeah. And it's so cool the way this zeolite works. It's almost like a little cage, and it literally traps the metals and pulls them out. But the thing people have to think about with this is because it's a binder, we don't want to take it around the time that we're taking our other oral supplements or stuff. So what I do is I have it sitting in a cup of water by my bed. When I wake up to pee at night, I just drink it down and
that's
good
a good
to go.
tip, actually, because it's so hard to time it, right? Because I take magnesium at night, and in the morning I take my other things. So when do I take this binder?
Yeah, but circling back to the peptide question about what did I do to support during that time, when we think about the problems that come around with mercury, it's got to do with how our mitochondria is transporting electrons. It does a pretty bad job of it when there's mercury in the picture. And to support that process, we can't increase the throughput of mitochondria or electrons in the mitochondria because of all that oxidative stress. That membrane's already damaged. So SS31, perfect time to pull that out of the hat.
Okay.
That now you've got the structural support so that as you're doing that detox and you're doing the things you need to with your binders and chelation, your mitochondria can continue to make energy and maintain its structure in the face of oxidative stress.
That's good to know. That's really good. And now if some people weren't comfortable in injections, right? That's probably the best way for a lot of these peptides. What is your thoughts about the nasal spray ones?
So
I just found those. I saw those the last Biohack World event that I went in LA, and I tried the nasal sprays because some of the peptides, they sting, like the GHKCU.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, ow.
Yep.
I'm like, I want the benefit of the glowing skin and my nice hair, but this really hurts, and it's a daily one. So I kind of push it back, but I'd love to use it. So I bought the nasal spray. So I'm just curious as far as the bioavailability, the function of it, does that change?
It does. Yeah. And some of the peptides are going to be a good candidate for this. Generally, what I've heard, and this is just what I've heard, up to 15 amino acids, it's going to be stable enough that that's an option. And actually something kind of cool when you think about AOD 9604 that people might be familiar with. And that's the one that's a isolated part of growth hormones, 191 amino acids. It's basically 176 through 191, the part that says burn more fat. But when you take it as a nasal spray, it's structurally really similar to I can't think of the name of it right now. I'm drawing a blank, but it's basically almost the same. And you have a cribriform plate up there, and doing it intranasally actually activates the immune system in your brain. So there'd be benefit to doing that.
Okay, that's great to know.
With the GHK, that one feels like you got stung by a wasp.
Yes.
I don't have
Is there a way around that?
The topical is really, in my opinion, the best option.
Okay.
I don't have much experience with the GHK as a nasal spray, but if I'm thinking structurally, because it's a small peptide, I think it would work, but I honestly don't know.
Don't know. Yeah. Okay. Well, I love the honesty. And there's so much. I'm like, is there one peptide that you're just like, it'd be so beneficial for us all? You know, I know that's hard, but is there one that we're seeing? There's so many benefits. We live in a toxic world that really on a cellular level, that this could be, you know, because I've heard so many doctors that work like at the Mayo Clinic here, and they say if, you know, all the patients in this hospital would be on certain peptides, you know, with a provider, half of these beds would be empty.
Yeah.
Right. So are there some, I know that's probably hard, but
there's a couple, I think, that really pretty good safety profile and a lot that they'd improve for people. BPC, people are familiar with it, but sometimes I think because it's so familiar, people don't realize all the stuff it does. And it modulates nitric oxide, which is going to affect vasodilation and also helps with repairing gut lining.
The gut lining. That's what I kind of know it as. It's a gut lining and repair of any injury, right? Which you would inject it. Let's say you had a knee injury. Where would you inject it? First of all, your knee. There's not a lot of fat there.
Yeah.
So where would you inject it if you had like a knee injury or, you know, just arm closest to the location?
Yeah. Generally, you want to think about if you have an injury and you're using like BPC or thymosin beta 4, kind of the closer you get it to the injury, the better off you're going to be. And just wherever you can kind of pinch and use a subcutaneous is fine. And the reason, the way I explain it is if you can picture a van full of workers that want to go repair everything, these guys are awesome.
Okay.
And if they decide to enter through your mouth, they're driving around in me and they're going to be like, this guy's could use a little work. So my van of 10 is now down to a van of 6. 4 of them get out, they're working on my gut. They make it down to my knee. And in my glory days, I lifted some weight. So they're like, we could probably patch that up a little bit. And I'm down to a driver and a passenger. By the time they get up to my shoulder, the passenger found something over in this elbow. So I've just got a driver working on that. So the magnitude of effect or response or whatever, the pharmacokinetics is going to be lowered. Now, if we had an entrance ramp for that van right at the shoulder, workers are going to be like, wow, this is a disaster. 8 of them might jump out, but that still leaves 2 to fix the gut, but most of them are going where we need it.
Okay, so but if you want it mostly for gut repair, which most of us are dealing with leaky gut and overgrowth of parasites and different bacterias, you would PCP 157 to inject it in gut. Now, is this a daily dose that you would do normally with PCP?
There's a couple different ways you can do it. On the BPC, sometimes I'll do daily. Sometimes you can do a couple times a week. You can do twice daily. It really depends on the situation and what you're trying to fix.
Okay.
If we're working on something like gut lining, I think maybe just starting with single injection a day would be a good option. And I know a lot of people wonder about BPC as an oral. And it's not so much that it doesn't work, but what I would tell people if they're working on their gut is if you already have a leaky gut and we're taking this, if we are able to do a sub-Q, we're going to bypass that bottleneck, the leaky gut. And circling back to the leaky gut in line with the BPC, another really helpful peptide is going to be that lorazepatide.
Okay, I've never tried that one.
Lorazepatide decreases zonulin, and zonulin's one of the things that pulls apart those tight cellular junctions. You asked for one that I think everybody should be on, and most people probably aren't going to see this one coming, but I think thymosin alpha-1, there's so much upside, and it's not an immune system booster.
So thymosin?
Thymosin,
Okay.
It's not an immune system booster. It's something that's going to modulate the immune system. And a better way to explain it is immune surveillance. So if we circle back to the cancer thing and how clever it is at dampening down the antioxidant system so it doesn't trigger an immune response, this is like having a drone floating over and being able to say, like, after maybe the 10th time through, like, that one looks a little off, that cell looks a little off.
Okay.
So it can be part of something that's supporting that repair process. And even for, if you're an old knuckle dragging meathead like me, for hypertrophy training, one of the biggest limitations people forget about is the adaptability of the immune system. And when we can balance out that immune system with something like a thymosin alpha 1, that can translate into better hypertrophy adaptations.
Okay.
And
I love that. That's good
so
to
much
know.
you can do
I
with that.
can't wait
Yeah.
to try it now.
Yeah.
That was the first thing. I feel like our time is up, but I was like, I have so much I want to learn. But the first thing for me when I was living in a toxic environment was the gut. I had a severe acid reflux, and somebody that's working through all of that with a provider, just knowing that could help with the repair and with some nervous system regulation, but how it's blending, right? Bringing that awareness, even for cancer patients, finding a doctor that is very knowledgeable with this kind of cellular work and these peptides, instead of creating that fear behind it, or this is, just get educated and find providers that are very knowledgeable. And if people wanted to work with you and follow you, how could they find you?
Yeah. So I built a school community. I'm not very tech savvy, but I figured out how to make a school community. And I've got over 150 articles I've written for free in there. And the whole point of it is really, as you can tell from talking to me, I like to take things that are complicated and make them simple, because that's how I learn. And my goal with the community is, if I can give people agency over their health, where when they hear all these cool things that are coming in the biohacking world or wherever they're at, and they can make the decision around them, like, is this the right tool for me? How's it work? Is this the right terrain to put it in? Then that equips them to have that conversation with their physician. They can work hand in hand and get the best outcome. So I've got the free community, and then I also have an upgraded community. It's my membership tier. It's the classroom. And I've got 2 courses in there. I've got one, I call it Biochemical Fluency. And the whole point of it is, it's the course I wish I had when I started out, that I rattled off a couple of letters and numbers. I know that can be intimidating, but there's an easy way to learn these things and just think through them. So instead of reading letters and numbers, you're reading a sentence, almost a story. And I give people the tools to do that. And the other course I have ties into the GLP stuff. It's about when GLPs stop working and our immune metabolism is off, what do we have to do to get it back on track? And I do all sorts of things in there. It's a fun community. Instagram, it's just not super creative there. It's just @ and then my name, Anthony, ANTHONYCASTORE. And I try to post pretty regularly, just get some stuff up there. But I'll be speaking at the Peptide World Congress this weekend.
I'll see you there.
I'm excited for that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. It starts tomorrow. And because same with me, I want to learn more. I would be knowledgeable. A lot of it just like for me, and hopefully incorporate coaching programs. And so I just want to thank you for your knowledge, your expertise. I feel we could have talked for another hour.
For sure.
But so thank you so much for listening today. I hope this intrigued your curiosity about peptides. Get educated, release the fears, and maybe even try it yourself with a provider. Thank you for listening.